I need to talk to you.
Just now, you looked just like your mother.
Thank you. I need to ask you a question.
Of course.
Why did you leave us?
Because one day, I looked at your mother and you and realized you both didn't mean anything to me anymore. You don't need to come back.
The film opens in the mountains of Arizona during a violent storm that is tearing across the region. News stations describe it as the most powerful storm the state has ever experienced, with heavy rainfall and winds exceeding 135 kilometers per hour. Emergency rescue teams have been deployed into the mountains searching for 3 hikers who disappeared during the storm. From above, a helicopter pilot communicates with the rescue team leader, asking if they have located the missing hikers yet. The team leader replies that the search dogs are still tracking, but so far they have not been able to pinpoint the hikers' location. However, conditions continue to worsen. The pilot warns them that a dangerous flash flood is forming higher up the mountain and rapidly moving toward their position. He immediately orders the rescue team to abandon the search and evacuate the mountain before the flood reaches them. At the same time, the sheriff radios the pilot and asks whether he has seen a volunteer rider who had gone into the area on horseback, because the man is no longer responding to the radio. The pilot assumes the volunteer already turned back, since remaining on the mountain would almost certainly mean death. Moments later, the pilot reports severe turbulence and is forced to pull the helicopter away from the storm. Meanwhile, the volunteer rider reaches the riverbank and discovers one of the missing hikers. Tragically, she has already died after being caught in the first surge of floodwater. The volunteer is revealed to be John Rambo. Realizing the second wave of the flood is rushing toward him, Rambo quickly mounts his horse and rides off to search for the remaining hikers. He eventually finds them and urgently tells them that a massive flood is about to crash down the mountain. He orders them to climb onto the horse immediately. One of the hikers, Jimmy, asks about his wife, who had been traveling with them. Rambo sadly informs him that he already found her, and she did not survive the first flood. But Jimmy refuses to accept it and insists on searching for her himself. Ignoring Rambo's warning, he walks away into the storm. Just then, the wall of water arrives. Rambo quickly orders the remaining survivor, Sarah, to jump off the horse and hide behind a nearby rock. He ties the horse to a tree, wraps a rope around the rock, and secures both himself and Sarah to it. He tells her to hold on as tightly as she can. Moments later, the raging flood crashes into them, but the rope holds firm and keeps them anchored against the force of the water. Later, the rescue teams eventually discover the bodies of Jimmy and his wife along the riverbank. Not long after, John returns from the mountains with Sarah safely beside him, where the sheriff is waiting. Rambo explains that Jimmy's wife had already died during the first wave of the flood, and that Jimmy went back into the storm trying to find her. The sheriff confirms that both of their bodies were recovered near the river. Hearing this weighs heavily on Rambo, who feels responsible for not being able to save them. The sheriff reassures him that he did everything he could and thanks him for risking his life to help. As Rambo prepares to leave, Sarah approaches him and sincerely thanks him for saving her life. Afterward, Rambo returns to his father's ranch and places the horse back in the stable. Exhausted, he takes his medication before entering the house. Inside, Maria is waiting for him with a cup of hot coffee to help warm him up. She tells him she already heard the news about the storm and knows that 2 people lost their lives. Rambo admits that he couldn't save them, saying it reminds him of how he couldn't save many of his friends during the war. Maria gently tells him he should not blame himself for those things. The war is over, and he is no longer a soldier fighting battles. Now, he is simply doing what he can to help others. But Rambo confesses that the memories of what happened in the past still haunt him and are impossible to forget. Wanting to ease his mind, Maria changes the subject and tells him that whenever he sits outside in the old rocking chair, he reminds her of his father. She says his father loved sitting in that same chair, quietly, spending hours reflecting without saying a word. She also thanks Rambo for coming back home and allowing her to live with him while helping raise his niece, Gabrielle. Maria is Gabrielle's maternal grandmother. Rambo thanks her for everything and wishes her a good night before leaving the house. Afterward, he walks down into the tunnels he built beneath the ranch. This underground space is where he spends most of his time. Inside, he keeps his belongings, old war memories, and the few peaceful memories he has built with Maria and Gabrielle. He puts on some music, lies down, and eventually falls asleep. The following morning, Rambo wakes up, takes his medication, and heads outside to the training arena where he begins working with the horses. After finishing his routine, he goes back into the house where Maria already has coffee poured and breakfast waiting for him. While eating, Rambo asks about Gabrielle, and Maria tells him she went to visit her friend, Antonia. Once breakfast is finished, Rambo walks down into the tunnels beneath the ranch to repair several tools that were damaged during the storm. While working, painful memories from the war begin surfacing in his mind. Visions of violence and bloodshed that still haunt him. The memories make him angry, and he releases that frustration by hammering metal and forging a knife at his workbench. At that moment, Gabrielle returns from Antonia's house and enters the tunnels. She asks Rambo if he finished training the horses without her. He tells her he already did, and then hands her a gift he made, a beautiful letter opener crafted from Damascus steel. He explains that she can keep it on her desk when she leaves for college. Gabrielle laughs and tells him that people rarely write letters anymore. Rambo replies that if nothing else, she could use it to protect herself. Afterward, the two leave the tunnels together and ride their horses across the ranch. During the ride, Gabrielle talks about how strange it feels knowing she will soon leave for college. She tells Rambo she can't believe she's about to move away and leave him behind. Rambo jokes that the ranch will probably be much quieter once she's gone. Gabrielle asks if he'll really be okay living there without her. She then mentions that later she has to go to Antonia's house because they're throwing a small party for friends who are heading to college that year. Rambo suggests she invite them to celebrate at the ranch instead. But Gabrielle reminds him that the last time her friends visited, they were a little intimidated by him because he kept staring at them without saying anything. Rambo explains that he doesn't do it intentionally. It's simply something that happens without him realizing it. Even so, Gabrielle thanks him and says the party at Antonia's will probably work out better. Then Rambo surprises her by suggesting she show her friends the tunnels beneath the ranch. Gabrielle is shocked by the offer since he never allows anyone down there, not even Maria. But Rambo tells her he's willing to make an exception because they're her friends. Gabrielle immediately loves the idea and happily agrees. That night, Gabrielle's friends arrive at the ranch and eagerly head down into the tunnels Rambo built beneath the property. They are amazed by what they see and wander through the underground passages as if they were exploring a tourist attraction. Maria watches them in disbelief, surprised that Rambo allowed anyone into the tunnels. Rambo even offers to let her go take a look if she wants, but she politely declines and says she'd rather stay upstairs. Meanwhile, Gabrielle spends time celebrating with her boyfriend Jimmy and the rest of her friends. During the party, she receives a phone call from her friend Giselle. Giselle excitedly tells her that she finally found what Gabrielle had been asking for. Not long after that call, the party comes to an end and the guests begin leaving the ranch. Later, Rambo walks down into the tunnels and finds Gabrielle cleaning up the mess her friends left behind. He asks her how the party went. Gabrielle tells him everyone had a great time, although her friends kept asking why her uncle built such a huge network of tunnels under the ranch. She jokes that she had to tell them he enjoys digging and might be a little crazy. After a moment, Gabrielle says there's something important she wants to talk about. She explains that she wants to travel to Mexico because Giselle lives there and has discovered the address of her father. Gabrielle says she needs to meet him and finally ask why he abandoned her and her mother all those years ago. Rambo immediately tells her that her father was not a good man. Gabrielle insists that there must have been some kind of reason for what he did. But Rambo firmly says there is never a good excuse for abandoning your family, especially when you are lucky enough to have one. Hearing this makes Gabrielle sad. She says her father may have changed over time. Rambo responds that people like him usually change for the worse. Gabrielle asks him to trust her and believe she can handle the situation and make the right choice. Rambo explains that if she goes to Mexico, he will not be able to protect her there. Gabrielle replies that he cannot protect her forever and asks him to allow her the chance to face her father herself. Rambo tells her that he thinks of her as his own daughter. He understands that she wants answers, but he asks her to wait until she is older and understands the world a little better before making such a decision. After thinking about what he said, Gabrielle agrees with him. She says she's going upstairs to get some sleep, wishes him good night, and leaves the tunnels. The following morning, Gabrielle tells Maria that she managed to locate her father's address and still wants to travel to Mexico to meet him. Maria becomes furious and immediately tells her that her father is a terrible man who never cared about anyone but himself. She insists that he would not care about seeing Gabrielle now. Rambo overhears the conversation and walks in to ask what is happening. Maria explains that Gabrielle is still planning to go to Mexico to see her father. Rambo reminds Gabrielle that he believed she had already changed her mind after their conversation the night before. Gabrielle apologizes and says she spent the entire night thinking about it, and she now feels she must hear the answers directly from her father. Maria becomes emotional and tells her that the man would not even remember her and never truly considered her his daughter. She tells Gabrielle that Rambo is the one who has always acted like her real father because he was the one who raised her and protected her all those years. She also reminds her that her father never once visited her mother in the hospital while she was dying from cancer. Maria continues, explaining that the man treated them terribly and was often violent. Rambo was the one who had to step in and keep him away from them. Rambo tries to calm the situation, but Maria refuses to listen and firmly declares that she will not allow Gabrielle to go to Mexico because the place is too dangerous. Gabrielle pleads with her, but Maria ends the argument. Feeling defeated, Gabrielle says she will forget about the trip. She tells Maria she is going to visit her friend Antonia and then leaves the house. Afterward, Rambo heads outside to train the horses while Maria apologizes to him for how heated the argument became. Meanwhile, Gabrielle gets into her car and begins driving toward Antonia's house. But during the drive, she keeps thinking about her father. Eventually, she changes her mind and decides she will go to Mexico anyway. Soon, she crosses the border and enters Mexico. She drives to the home of her friend Giselle, parks the car, and knocks on the door. Giselle opens it and warmly welcomes her inside. She offers Gabrielle a drink and suggests she rest for a while before they head out together to find her father's apartment. Later that night, Giselle drives Gabrielle to the apartment building where her father supposedly lives. Gabrielle walks up the stairs and knocks on the door. A woman answers and asks who she is looking for. Gabrielle asks if Manuel is there. The woman questions who Gabrielle is, but Manuel overhears the conversation and appears behind the door. After seeing Gabrielle, he tells his wife to leave them alone so he can speak with her privately. Manuel looks at Gabrielle and remarks that she has grown up since the last time he saw her. He admits that he never expected her to appear at his door after all these years. Gabrielle tells him she only came to ask him one thing. She wants to know why he abandoned her and her mother. Without hesitation, Manuel gives her a cold answer. He says that one day he looked at both of them and realized they meant nothing to him. According to him, staying with them felt like he was wasting his life. After her mother died and Gabrielle was left with him, he says he still did not want her. His words deeply hurt Gabrielle. Manuel then tells her not to return or try to contact him again, before shutting the door in her face. Heartbroken, Gabrielle walks away from the apartment building. Giselle sees the look on her face and asks what happened. Gabrielle admits that her uncle had been right all along, and she now wants to return home to the ranch immediately. But Giselle refuses to let her leave so late at night, especially when she is so upset. Instead, she suggests they go out for a while to help Gabrielle calm down and forget about the painful conversation. Gabrielle reluctantly agrees. The two of them head to a nightclub and sit down at the bar. Giselle introduces Gabrielle to a man she knows there. Soon after, the man approaches Gabrielle and offers to buy her a drink. While she isn't looking, he secretly slips a drug into her glass. The following morning, a powerful crime boss named Don Miguel arrives at the luxurious residence of the Martinez brothers, Victor and Hugo. The two brothers run one of the largest criminal organizations in Mexico, dealing in contraband and human trafficking. Hugo greets Miguel and informs him that they are preparing a fresh group of women that he can purchase. Victor soon appears and welcomes Miguel as well, eager to discuss the details of their upcoming deal. However, Hugo interrupts and asks Victor to leave so he can handle the negotiations privately. Victor refuses, reminding Hugo that they are partners and that business discussions should happen openly. Miguel quickly notices the tension between the brothers. Rather than get involved in their argument, he simply tells Hugo to contact him once they figure out who will be running the operation. Hugo asks him to wait and pulls Victor aside, telling him not to interfere with the deal. Victor becomes angry, arguing that he is the one who does the hard work of finding the most valuable girls for their operation, yet Hugo keeps pushing him aside when the deals are made. Hugo responds that Victor's behavior makes them look unprofessional and could cost them a lot of money. Frustrated, Victor tells him to handle the deal however he wants while he continues working his own way, and he storms off. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Rambo finishes another training session with the horses. Maria approaches him looking deeply worried. She explains that Gabrielle never went to Antonia's house like she claimed. Instead, she secretly traveled to Mexico. Maria says that Giselle called earlier and revealed that Gabrielle went there to meet her father and has not returned since. Hearing this, Rambo immediately asks Maria for Giselle's address as well as the address of Gabrielle's father. After getting the information, Rambo promises Maria that he will find Gabrielle and bring her home. He says goodbye, climbs into his truck, and drives away from the ranch heading toward Mexico. And that night, Victor visits an abandoned house where the gang keeps the women they have kidnapped. Among them is Gabrielle. Victor gathers the girls and coldly warns them that as long as they obey the rules, they will be treated well. But if any of them attempt to escape, the punishment will be severe. He threatens that if even one of them tries to run away, he will personally track her down and kill her himself before walking away. Meanwhile, Rambo arrives in Mexico and heads straight to Manuel's apartment. He knocks on the door, and when Manuel opens it, Rambo immediately demands to know where Gabrielle is. Manuel claims he knows nothing about her whereabouts. Rambo angrily tells him that whatever happens to Gabrielle will be his fault, and that he should have killed him 10 years ago when he had the chance. After saying this, Rambo storms away. He reaches for his sedative medication, but then decides to throw it away instead. Next, he drives to Giselle's house. Introducing himself as Gabrielle's uncle, he asks if she knows where Gabrielle is. Giselle explains that Gabrielle wanted to see her father, so she helped her find the address. She claims that after that, she has no idea what happened to her. Rambo asks to come inside so he can question her further, and Giselle reluctantly agrees. Once inside, she explains that Manuel treated Gabrielle harshly and eventually forced her to leave. Seeing how upset Gabrielle was, Giselle says she took her out to help her relax. According to her story, they went to a nightclub together, but during the night, they somehow got separated and she hasn't seen Gabrielle since. She says she even called the ranch to inform Maria that Gabrielle never came back from meeting her father. Giselle insists she was simply trying to help, but Rambo quickly accuses her of lying to cover up her involvement. When Giselle starts getting angry, Rambo suddenly grabs her hands and demands to know why Gabrielle's bracelet is in her possession. Giselle claims that she gave the bracelet to Gabrielle as a gift, but Rambo immediately knows that's impossible because the bracelet originally belonged to Gabrielle's mother. At that moment, he realizes the truth. Giselle betrayed her friend and sold her to the traffickers. Giselle immediately begins shouting at Rambo and orders him to leave her house, but Rambo pulls out his knife and coldly tells her she is coming with him. He forces her to take him back to the nightclub and identify the man Gabrielle had been speaking with. If she refuses, he promises she will suffer a slow and painful death. Later that night, they arrive at the nightclub together and enter the crowded room. Giselle scans the crowd carefully until she finally spots the man who had been talking with Gabrielle earlier. She quietly points him out to Rambo. After that, Rambo tells her to leave while he waits near the bar for the man to finish his night. While Rambo stands there watching, a woman named Carmen sitting at the bar begins noticing him. She keeps observing him quietly, curious about what he's doing. Eventually, the man finishes his business inside the club and leaves with one of the girls he had been flirting with. Rambo immediately follows him outside, and Carmen secretly follows them as well. When the man reaches his car and is about to get inside, Rambo suddenly grabs him and presses a knife against him. He shows him a picture of Gabrielle and demands to know where she is. The criminal claims he has never seen her before. Rambo responds by striking him hard with the back of the knife across his collarbone before stabbing his leg. He then violently dislocates the man's collarbone and threatens to break every bone in his body if he keeps lying. The terrified criminal finally gives in and says he will tell him everything. Rambo forces him into the car and drives away with him. From a distance, Carmen watches the entire scene and decides to follow them in her own vehicle. Eventually, they reach a hidden location where the gang keeps the kidnapped girls. The criminal points out the house used as their hideout. Once Rambo gets the information he needs, he knocks the man unconscious. Rambo steps out of the car and moves toward the building. From outside, he can see Victor and several gang members inside the property, which is clearly controlled by the criminal organization. Before he can get closer, one of the gang members spots him and alerts the others that someone suspicious is outside. Soon after, Hugo arrives at the location, accompanied by several corrupt police officers who secretly work with the gang. Victor leads them to the room where the kidnapped girls are being held, and tells them they are free to enjoy the women in exchange for their cooperation. At the same time, Rambo moves closer to the house, but the gang members quickly notice him. They surround him, capture him, and drag him inside to stand before Hugo and Victor. Two of the criminals search him and remove all the weapons he is carrying. Hugo picks up Rambo's driver's license and notices he is from Arizona. Then he sees the photograph of Gabrielle and tells Victor that he recognizes the girl. Victor confirms that she is one of the new girls they recently captured. Victor asks Rambo what the girl means to him. When Rambo refuses to answer, Victor slashes his face with a knife, knocking him to the ground. The rest of the gang joins in and begins brutally beating him. Eventually, Hugo orders them to stop. Rambo looks up and demands that they release the girl. Victor suggests killing him immediately by throwing him into the acid tank used to dispose of bodies. But Hugo steps forward and explains that to him all the girls are simply products he sells for profit. However, because Rambo came looking for her, Hugo says he will personally handle Gabrielle. Instead of simply selling her, he plans to use her as an example to send a message. Then Hugo tells Rambo something even worse. He will let him live. Victor disagrees, but Hugo quickly silences him. Hugo says Rambo will survive so he can spend the rest of his life remembering what happened to the girl he tried to save. Before leaving, Hugo orders Victor to mark both of them. Victor grabs Rambo and cuts an X-shaped scar into his cheek. Hugo then orders the same mark to be placed on Gabrielle as well. After the gang leaves, Rambo lies injured on the ground. From a distance, Carmen has been watching everything from her car. As soon as the gang drives away, she rushes over to help him up and takes him with her. Later, Victor angrily confronts Hugo after learning that Rambo managed to escape. Victor complains that they should have killed him immediately when they had the chance. Hugo calmly asks what Victor wants him to do about it now. Victor responds by demanding control over the girl Rambo came looking for. Hugo shrugs and tells him he can do whatever he wants with her. Victor then grabs a syringe filled with drugs and heads to the room where Gabrielle is being held. He shows her Rambo's driver's license and asks who the man in the photo is. Gabrielle nervously asks where he got the license. Victor lifts the syringe and repeats the question. When she refuses to answer, he injects her with the drug. As the substance begins affecting her body, Victor takes Rambo's knife and cuts a deep mark across her cheek. Meanwhile, back in Carmen's apartment the next day, a doctor finishes stitching Rambo's wound. He explains that Rambo suffered a mild concussion and should really be taken to a hospital. However, he also says that with rest he should recover within a few days. After giving his advice, the doctor leaves. Several days pass while Rambo remains unconscious and Carmen continues taking care of him. During that same time, the gang repeatedly injects Gabrielle with drugs to keep her weak and under control. Back at the ranch, Maria anxiously waits and hopes that Rambo will return with Gabrielle. After 4 days, Carmen returns home from outside and finds that Rambo has finally regained consciousness. When he wakes up, he asks who she is. She introduces herself as Carmen and explains that she works as a freelance journalist. She also tells him that his truck is safe in her garage. Rambo asks how he ended up there. Carmen explains that she had been investigating the nightclub and following one of the gang's pimps when she noticed him inside the club watching the same man. She continued observing him until the gang captured and beat him, and once they left, she stepped in and rescued him. Rambo then asks how long he has been unconscious. Carmen tells him it has been 4 days. Immediately, he asks about the gang that kidnapped his daughter. Carmen reveals that they belong to the Martinez brothers organization, run by Hugo and Victor. She also tells him that the same gang kidnapped her sister years earlier, and she later died from a drug overdose after being forced into prostitution. Rambo apologizes to her for what happened and asks how he can find the gang. Carmen warns him that going after them alone is nearly impossible because they have too many men and would likely kill him. But Rambo says he is not thinking about the odds. His only focus is bringing Gabrielle back. He asks Carmen to help him find them. After a moment of hesitation, Carmen agrees. Soon after, Rambo gets into his truck and drives to the location Carmen gave him, which turns out to be one of the gang's hidden brothels. When he arrives, he knocks on the door and tells the man who answers that he is looking for a young girl. Believing he is just another customer, the criminal allows him to enter. Inside, Rambo quickly realizes there are only 3 guards running the place. Without hesitation, he pulls out a hammer and brutally attacks them, killing them one by one. After eliminating the guards, he moves through the building, breaking into the rooms and beating the customers inside. He urges the captured girls to run and escape while they have the chance, but most of them refuse, terrified that the gang will hunt them down and kill them if they try. Eventually, Rambo finds the room where Gabrielle is being held. The moment he sees her, he becomes calm and quiet. He notices the deep cut on her cheek and the numerous needle marks covering her arm from the drugs they forced into her body. He gently tells her not to worry and that he is taking her home. Rambo helps her out of the building and carries her back to the truck before quickly driving away from the hideout. Not long after, the gang discovers what happened at the brothel. Victor becomes furious with Hugo, reminding him that he warned him they should have killed Rambo immediately when they had the chance. Hugo tells him to relax, saying they will eventually track him down, but Victor refuses to leave it alone and says that this time he will handle the situation his own way before storming off. Meanwhile, Rambo drives toward the border with Gabrielle sitting beside him in the truck. She weakly apologizes for everything that happened, but Rambo reassures her that none of it was her fault. He tells her they are going home and that everything will be okay. He even tells her that he managed to recover her mother's bracelet. As they continue driving, Gabrielle begins losing consciousness. Rambo tries to keep her awake, urging her to open her eyes and focus on his voice. He tells her that when he first returned home years ago, he felt completely lost and had no reason to keep living. But when he met her, everything changed. In her, he saw kindness and innocence that he never believed still existed in the world. She became the family he had always wished for. But before they reach the border, Gabrielle quietly stops breathing. Rambo pulls the truck over and checks on her, only to realize that she has died. The loss devastates him. After the devastating moment in the truck, Rambo continues driving and eventually crosses the border back into the United States. The following morning, he finally arrives at the ranch. Maria is waiting outside, hoping to see Gabrielle step out of the vehicle, but Rambo stops her from coming closer and gently tells her the terrible truth. Gabrielle did not survive. The news completely breaks Maria's heart. She approaches slowly and says a final goodbye to her granddaughter. Later, Rambo buries Gabrielle on the ranch, remembering all the joyful moments they shared together throughout the years. After the funeral, Rambo returns to the house and helps Maria pack her belongings. He loads her things into the car and tells her that after Gabrielle's death, there's nothing left for them at the ranch anymore. He asks her to go live with her sister where she will be safe. Maria then asks him where he plans to go. Rambo tells her he will go back to wandering like he did in the past. Maria quietly asks if she will ever see him again. Without giving a clear answer, she eventually drives away from the ranch. Once she is gone, Rambo retrieves the blueprints for the ranch and begins preparing for revenge. He starts by digging a large trench at the entrance of the property and filling it with gasoline. Next, he installs deadly traps throughout the horse stable. He then moves into the underground tunnels, carefully setting traps along every corridor. Beside many of the traps, he hides rifles for quick access. He even prepares special ammunition using magnesium that burns extremely fast. Finally, he practices using his bow, sharpening his aim, and rebuilding his combat instincts. When the preparations are complete, Rambo knows the ranch has been transformed into a battlefield, and he is ready for the final confrontation. Later that night, Rambo drives back into Mexico and stops at Carmen's apartment. He knocks on the door, and when she opens it, she immediately asks what he wants. Rambo tells her he needs her help. Carmen hesitates but lets him inside, warning him that if anyone sees them together, the gang will kill him. She asks whether he managed to rescue his daughter. Rambo quietly tells her that Gabrielle died. Carmen offers her condolences, saying she understands his pain more than most. She then asks why he returned. Rambo tells her he is looking for the thin man who cut Gabrielle's face, Victor. At first, Carmen refuses to help, explaining that going after them will only get him killed and will not change anything. But Rambo insists. He says he intends to bring death to the men responsible and make them feel the same suffering they caused. He also reminds Carmen that the same gang destroyed her sister's life. After hearing this, Carmen finally agrees to help him. Soon after, Rambo sneaks into Victor's apartment building and silently eliminates the guards outside using his knife. He enters the apartment and finds Victor alone in the bathroom. The next morning, the Mexican police surround the building and begin investigating the scene. When Hugo arrives, he rushes into the bedroom and finds Victor brutally tortured and killed. His head is missing, and Rambo has left his signature message on the body. Later, Hugo discovers Victor's severed head thrown onto the road near the border as a challenge. Enraged by his brother's death, Hugo gathers all his men and weapons before driving toward the ranch to hunt Rambo down. By morning, they arrive at the property and begin searching it. But as one of their vehicles enters the ranch, it hits one of Rambo's hidden mines. The explosion ignites the gasoline trench and sets the entrance ablaze. Hugo orders several of his men to search the stable while the rest follow him toward the house. Two of the gang members enter the house, and one is instantly killed by a trap. Rambo emerges from the tunnels and eliminates the second one before disappearing underground again. Meanwhile, the group searching the stable triggers another trap that covers them in gasoline. Rambo emerges again and kills them before retreating into the tunnels. Hugo and the remaining gang members chase him into the underground maze, but inside, the tunnels are filled with deadly traps. One by one, the criminals are killed. Some are burned by magnesium bullets, others fall into traps, and several are blown apart by mines. Rambo even plays music through the tunnels to unsettle and confuse them. Eventually, nearly all of Hugo's men are dead. The last few are killed when Rambo collapses part of the tunnel, though he is wounded in the process. Finally, only Hugo remains. Rambo begins luring him deeper into the tunnels. Hugo chases him and manages to shoot him in the shoulder. Rambo shuts off the electricity and speaks to him through the radio, telling him that all of his men are already dead. He explains that he left Hugo alive intentionally so he could personally make him suffer for what he did to Gabrielle. Rambo then destroys the tunnels with explosives. Hugo barely escapes and stumbles into the horse stable. As he searches for Rambo, Rambo suddenly appears and fires an arrow that pins him against the wall. Rambo calmly approaches him, pulls out his knife, and tells him that now he will feel the same pain he caused others. He stabs Hugo in the chest, opens his ribcage, and rips out his heart while he is still alive. Hugo looks at his own heart before dying. After the battle, Rambo slowly walks out of the stable, badly injured, and sits in his father's old rocking chair. He reflects on how he has lived in a world filled with war, death, and suffering, and how much of his soul has been lost along the way. But he says his heart is still alive, and he will continue fighting to protect his home and the memory of the family he loved. Later, he mounts his horse and rides away, choosing once again to wander the world and help those who cannot protect themselves. And with that, the story comes to an end.